All right, guys, we have one of the greatest minds of our generation, Timothy Poole Esquire, debating Pisco about January 6th.
You agree that there was a rebellion in LA. I just want to hear you say January 6th was a rebellion.
In what way?
You just said so certainly you mean something when you said you agreed that what happened in LA with ICE was a rebellion. You have your own standard for what you meant by rebellion, so clearly that applies to January 6th, doesn't it?
In January 6th, was there a foreign government saying that their people were agitating on behalf of?
I don't know what you're talking about. That the Scheinbahn represent that like the Mexican residents were doing. They were waving
flag.
They were waving foreign flags on January 6th. They were waving Georgian flag, the country of Georgia flag.
Was the head of Georgia agitating for Georgian national citizens or ethnically Georgian?
That turns on whether something is a rebellion.
Or invasion.
So whether or not they're waving a flag and whether a foreign country
is saying that these are our shock troops to leverage political
that changes in your mind whether something is a rebellion or not?
Or an invasion, yes. Of course it does.
The important thing to consider is the legal
Or an invasion. They're talking about rebellion, but whatever.
definition versus the colloquial or the semantic as interpreted by different individuals. The thing about January 6th is that I would argue certainly some of those people thought they were engaged in insurrection or rebellion. That's
not whether they thought, whether you called it and are willing to call it a rebellion. But you are willing to call L.A., what happened in L.A., the violence that occurred in L.A., a rebellion. Why is that?
So with January 6th, it was disorganized and random. Some of you make this look on your face, but you interrupted me before I can make my
It was absolutely planned. What are you talking about?
point.
Yeah, sure.
Some of the people who shut up certainly did have the intent to disrupt the electoral vote count. I have no problem with these people being criminally charged, locked up, and I think you go to prison for this, especially fighting cops. Was there an organized effort to bring people to January 6th for that purpose? It does not appear to be the case. That's why they didn't actually charge anybody under insurrection or anything like that.
They charge people of seditious conspiracy, which is a design to
indeed and
bring people there to
incorrect.
What do you
that was specifically among Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, specifically among those.
So they were engaged in rebellion, weren't they?
Group of individuals.
Were they engaged in rebellion?
That's actually.
What does it matter if they organize to bring their own people? It doesn't matter if it's in their own group or, outside of their group. They organized to bring people to the Capitol to stop Congress from counting the votes.
That was specifically among Oath Keepers and Proud Boys, specifically among those.
So they were engaged in rebellion, weren't they?
Group of individuals.
Were they engaged in rebellion?
That's actually an argument to be made. I would argue no.
Why not? Why were they not engaged in rebellion?
Let's roll, baby.
Did you
see with the ICE riots, where you have the federal law, you have federal government going in specifically to enforce a law, an organized group of people putting out flyers and saying, for the purpose of this, we will come out and engage in violence, is different, right? Not everybody in LA engaged in this is the point I'm making. People at January 6th.
Not everyone at January 6th did either. Not everyone in LA did either.
Exactly my point.
Yeah.
So when they went and arrested J6ers, and I said they should have been, what's the problem?
We're not talking about arrest. We're talking about whether or not something is categorized as a rebellion. You were quite willing,
and they did not
to call what happened in LA a rebellion
for the purpose of deploying law enforcement to put a stop to it. As I would agree with January 6th. Yes.
Okay, so then you would also call January 6th a rebellion, right? Your threshold is having law enforcement enforce the law to suppress a rebellion, okay? Or to suppress violence or whatever it is, right? That you're actually saying here. It happened in LA, and it happened on January 6th. But you refuse to call the January 6th instance a rebellion. Why is that? Why aren't you applying your logic consistently?
We're in agreement.
Oh, so January 6th was a rebellion?
No.
Okay.
This is
Help me out here.
So you're playing a semantic game instead of actually arguing.
I think you're playing the game here. I think
the game is actually quite simple. In both circumstances, law was invoked to deploy law enforcement to stop a riot. I agree with both circumstances in LA and DC to stop the
LA
riots.
was more organized, and that changes what.
Both of these cases, fit my my definition of a rebellion, but only the one where leftists are involved is the rebellion for some reason.
Whether it's a rebellion or not.
Among the people who organized it for the intention, be it LA or January 6th, they were engaged.
Even though they were organized in Jan, I mean, come on, you know that they were organized in Jan 6. I mean, not just because not everyone is part of the plan. They were people who were organized with a specific seditious
So if my
purpose.
argument is that there were some people on Jan 6 that intended to overthrow, to stop the vote count, most didn't, and there were some people in LA that were intending to stop federal government from engaging in law enforcement, which is under the law the same thing, insurrection or rebellion.
So in terms of frustrating the federal purpose,
so they're the exact same thing. I'm calling them the same thing. I'm saying law enforcement should have done the same thing, and you're choosing one to be and one not to be.
No, hang on. You're saying
That's literally what Tim is doing. Tim is saying, look, this is my criterion, okay? And both of these cases meet it. But I'm only choosing one of them to be a rebellion and the other one that I like not to be the rebellion.
you're saying that what happened in LA was a rebellion, and what happened in Jan 6 wasn't. You're saying that there's a distinction there.
I'm saying that there was an organized effort among leftist activists across California. We did not see that as a coordinated effort with January 6th. However, some people on January 6th.
No, but we did see a coordinated plan with respect to January 6th. We did.
Did have that intent. And if the government were to say, we are.
And I'm confused as to how that matters as well. So he's saying that, the fact that the LA riots were more organized, then that is sufficient to call it a rebellion. But because January 6th was not quite as organized, that's somehow not a rebellion, I guess, even though both met this, other threshold that I've been using about law enforcement in both cases. But the one that I like, I'm refusing to call a rebellion, which he did. If you go back in the video, he said January 6th was not a rebellion.
I'm saying that there was an organized effort among leftist activists across California. We did not see that as a coordinated effort with January 6th. However, some people on January 6th did have that intent. And if the government were to say, we are going to invoke the same act for the deployment of law enforcement to stop these violent actions, that is acceptable. We agree on that.
So rebellion is a type of prolonged insurrection. Okay, insurrection is the broader term here, and rebellion is a subset of it. And insurrection is levying war against the United States. It's a type of treason, all right? And levying war, and it has 4 elements to it: an assemblage, a public purpose, the use of force or intimidation, and to frustrate a U.S. law and basically to violate a U.S. law. And so I would, because I'm consistent, I would say that there are some things.
You're not.
And I am consistent in LA that would, under the historical definition of insurrection, qualify as an insurrection.
So let's
hang on a second. I am consistent, though, because I use that historical definition. I don't know what definition you guys are using, which is like somehow a foreign country has some role into whether something is an insurrection. Like, where are you getting that definition from?
Invasion. You cited invasion. He pointed out invasion.
But
Invasion is distinct from rebellion. Those are two different things.
Trump did not cite an invasion for his invocation of the National Guard.
You said he did.
So we should no. I said he cited a statute which includes one of the purposes in it: invasion, rebellion, or inability to.
So invasion is included. So let's make something clear.
He did not make a finding that
on January 6th, a large portion of the people.
Why did they even bring up invasion if they recognize that it has nothing to do with Trump's actions?
On January 6th, a large portion of the people who were arrested and charged did not engage in insurrection, did not engage in rebellion, did not riot, did not fight with police, did not tear down barricades, did not smash windows. There were people who showed up an hour after police had cleared everybody out. The doors were still open, the paths were still clear. I've interviewed some of these people, I have met them. One couple, they were in their late 50s, showed up an hour after everything had stopped, walked up the stairs to open doors, walked in, looking around, shrugged and left, and got convicted and sentenced to 18 months in jail. This is the distinction.
What is that?
Wait, what? How is that the distinction? What relevance does that have to the conversation at all? Just because something on January 6th happened that you didn't like does not mean it's not a rebellion. Like, I'm confused as to how that's relevant. But this is what Tim does. He tells these fucking completely irrelevant stories to confuse his guests. But fortunately, Pisco is not falling for it.
Wait, that's a distinction in terms of whether something is an insurrection or rebellion?
When we're talking about the whole of January 6th, we can't put a blanket on every single person who was arrested and
That's what I'm
charged.
trying to do.
So I want to make sure that's clear then. So you're not.
I'm not trying to say that everyone who didn't engage in insurrection.
I will put it this. I will put it.
That was never in question. Pisco was clearly not doing that. I mean, you also have to say the same thing about people in LA. Not every single person in LA who was rioting or, protesting went there for the express purpose of, committing acts of violence.
Many of these people were violent. They should go to jail. They should be convicted.
Did they engage in insurrection?
That's tough to say because we're talking about two different things. The legal, which is infringing, like
Under
stopping,
under what you understand the legal standard to be.
There's a difference between the constitutional, what insurrection is, and when the president can invoke the Insurrection Act. That's the debate we had several months ago, which regular people don't understand the distinction. The Insurrection Act refers to trying to overthrow the governments, right? I'm sorry, the 14th Amendment's statement about insurrection. This is what the Supreme Court ruled. However, the Insurrection Act is just when someone is
Black Lives Matter wasn't an insurrection under the constitutional test, even though you called it an insurrection.
That was under the Insurrection Act, which is the point I'm making right now. The Insurrection Act is when local law is not being enforced or individuals are stopping the federal government from enforcing law.
So why hasn't Trump invoked the Insurrection Act?
Yeah, I should. Fuck yeah, I should.
But he hasn't. And until he does, don't you think that you need to analyze? Like, you're basically saying that you don't care to analyze whether Trump's actions are legal or not under the current authorities
that is a huge leap that is not part of the
Do you care to analyze whether his actions are legal, or if they're illegal, are you going to say, who cares if it's illegal? That's what I'm kind of getting at. Is like, should I even
He wouldn't say who cares, but he would make up some long-winded, bullshit diatribe about how it's not illegal, even if it actually was. Tim Pool is great at twisting himself into justifying anything Trump does.
bother?
We've already analyzed that they're legal, and they are. And
we haven't analyzed, but I'm saying that they're illegal.
like Abby Phillips, all the liberals were like, "Yeah, Trump can do this."
Just because Abby Phillips says it doesn't mean that she's right. Come on, man. You're going to trust
We're
CNN?
making the
Just 'cause
point
CNN says it's
that
true.
the liberal narrative, except for you, is that while Trump can deploy National Guard, so long as they're picking up trash and not enforcing law.
It's not true. Gavin Newsom is in court right now. They just had a ruling that what he did in California violated posse comitatus.
He won. The latest appeal was that the restrictions are lifted.
No, hang on. No.
It's gone back and forth like 3 or 4 times.
The latest was that there was a trial on posse comitatus, and Judge Breyer found that they did, in fact, violate
The
posse
latest
comitatus.
was that the restrictions were lifted and Trump
Breyer himself stayed his own order to let the Ninth Circuit percolate. They're already reviewing it, whatever. All that is to say is it's a live issue under the courts, and it's a separate issue whether or not the courts are able to review it and whether or not he's following the law.
All right, guys, that was fun for me to watch. So I guess Tim's logic is once the federal government gets involved in the way they did in January 6th in LA, and there is planning behind those types of events, then that meets the threshold for a rebellion. But for some reason, the logic does not apply to January 6th, I guess because it wasn't as organized as the LA protests or something. Seems like a pretty flimsy argument to me. And Pisco repeatedly exposes the contradiction in Tim's logic. Clearly, Tim Pool has dementia and needs to be admitted into memory care as soon as possible. This is not good for his mental health. He's struggling really hard here. I mean, he has been for years. I think it's long overdue of admitting Tim into some type of facility. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this one. Talk to you later. Love you. Bye-bye.